Remember, if you want your solves critiqued, you can go to patreon.com/jperm, and it has changed starting last month where you can only get solves critiqued once every 2 months now, but on my channel it'll be the same because I still have somebody to pick for each month. For the first cross, we have blue here, and red can easily go right next to it so that it's blue-red in the correct order. And lastly, we have green set up here, and orange is flipped. The idea you had for the start of the cross is quite good. What you did was you aligned blue and then put green and red in together like this. Although before finishing green, you actually turned around to this side so that you have orange on the front. Then you put in green, then you inserted orange this way. This trick you did at the end here, which is putting it to the side and doing R'(FR), is very good if it's just this piece. But since the green was already here, it makes a lot more sense to put the orange on top of the green and put them in together like this. Picking which side to start for the cross is very important. Make sure you pick a side that doesn't involve cube rotations later. So here, what I would have done, given that we're starting facing with red, which is a simple side to start, we would put in these, and then instead of turning the cube all the way around, try to do this from the back. And I know it's harder to visualize, but you have to try to do this more often so that you don't have double cube rotations, which you should never do during the cross. In this case, you can put orange on top of green just like this, and then put them in together, which does take a harder finger trick. You don't want to be regripping to do this. I mean, you could, but better would be some kind of finger trick like that. So there's the cross, and you started F12 by facing orange, and you had this piece and this piece, and it's good that you know how to pair them up from here. Afterwards, you inserted this pair, and the next pair you worked on was the red-blue over here. Now, I don't think you did this, which is good, but what you did was a cube rotation to help you find pieces. Now, cube rotations in F2L should be saved for when it helps you solve pieces. What you did to solve this was like this, and then insert with a rotation. A habit I want you to get out of is using F moves when you could do R or L instead. So for example, if you're doing a trigger like a sledgehammer, then this does require F moves no matter which way you're facing. But if you're just going to do F and U moves, then change that to RU or LU. And then this is a rotation you ended up doing anyway for this case because you had to rotate to insert the pair. So actually it would have been strictly faster to just rotate first. Next you had this pair, so again, very good, you recognize how to pair them up, then inserted them into the back, and then we have this, which is pretty straightforward. Next, for this OLL case, you actually did this algorithm, which is wide F, sexy move, wide F prime, and then F comes after, so we can just do that, and then sexy move, F prime. For this case, there's the much better standard algorithm, which goes like this. For this PLL, there's already a cube rotation, and you started with the cube rotation to do the case, so not too bad. I personally would start with a U move, but it's not really a big deal. So you cube rotated here, started the PLL, and for D2, you have to do it with your left hand. Since you did it with your right hand, see how I can't do D2 right now with any of my fingers? I'd have to regrip, which is what you did. This is something you'll think more about later on, but for now I'm just going to point it out for your A-perm. You want to make sure you do this D2 with your left hand, whether it's DD right now, or if you learn the more advanced D2. Then afterwards you don't have to regrip your right hand anymore. So once you start doing this very fast, the regrips will matter more. And one more thing to think about, after you finish PLLs, no matter what grip you're in, you want to make sure that you don't change the grip to do the final U move. So in this case, I'd have to do a more special finger trick like this. The reason this solve was a lot slower than the previous one is mainly just the cross. So let's take a look at how you did this cross. First, you inserted red into its spot. And then here we have green, orange, and blue. And what you did next was insert orange into its spot. So what you did was, since orange could go here, then you moved red out of the way so that orange could go across from red, and then put it all back. Now, this only solved orange. It actually put green in a worse spot, and blue could have been done somewhere in the middle there. But we'll just continue with what you did. So next you did green by putting it into here. So the same idea as in the first solve like that, except you did it from the side, so like this. And then blue. From here, what you could do is the same idea as orange, where blue looks like it can go here, but then instead what you do is you take it out and then rotate and put it in here. So what you did to solve red was actually great, and that's because it leaves green, orange, and blue in the spot where if you just project where each of them could go into, that's in the correct order. So green, orange, blue, and the centers go green, orange, blue. What you should do here is move red away so that these can all be lined up to their proper spots, and then put in green, put in orange, and put in blue. Then align the cross. It looks like you were dealing with one piece at a time and thinking on the spot. Now those are two things you don't want to do during the cross because the cross is very complicated and you want to save as many moves as you can. So this is the type of thing you want to start planning fully in inspection, or on a hard cross like this, maybe just 3 pieces planned in inspection. Because if you go through in a real solve and you're just trying to solve orange and I tell you that, hey, you just moved green into a worse spot, it's very hard to see that on the spot, which is why you want to plan this stuff in advance. So you can put green in before orange and then put blue in right here. After making the cross, you did the blue and orange pair. So what you did was you did this to find this piece, and then you rotated, solved it like this. So pair them up like that. And then here, what you did was, I think you did that thinking it was going to go into here, but then it didn't, and it goes into here. So then you move this over, and then you inserted it like this. There were 2 spots there where you regripped that you should not have. So the first one is when you are pairing these up together. Any sequence starting with RU feels like you have to regrip, or the mirror like L prime U prime. Instead, always do that U move with a push finger trick with your left hand so you don't have to regrip, or a pinch finger trick with your right hand. Both of those feel very awkward at first, but they are faster because it saves you 2 regrips. So if I did that versus if I regrip and then do this and then unregrip. You can think of each regrip as actually worse than 1 move, so doing it like this is 3 moves, maybe with one of them being a little bit hard, and if you did it like this, it's like more than 5 moves. So you'd pair them up like this, then after moving them over here, when you insert, this regrip here is actually unnecessary, which could just be a bad habit because often you are doing RU, but since you're doing RU prime, then here you can actually just keep your thumb on front and do this. Always keep track of when you can do the pinch or push finger trick whenever your thumb's on top to help you avoid regrips, or if it's a case that doesn't even need a regrip, make sure you pay attention to that. Next, actually a very similar thing, this one going into the back. Now for the back slots, it's just R prime U that needs a regrip of your thumb up to the top before you start, but here it's R prime U prime, so you don't need a regrip. Next we have green and orange, and here again I think you just threw in a preemptive rotation, maybe to help you find pieces or maybe because you thought you needed it, but you should try not to rotate until you know you need one for sure. Because in this case, what you did was, I think you rotated again and then paired these up like that with F moves, and then you inserted it here. So that was 2 unnecessary rotations. And next we have this. And then for OLL to get the cross when you have the dot, what you are currently doing is F sexy move F prime to get this shape. And then what you do from here is put it over here and do F double sexy move F prime. The more efficient way to do it is like this, which is F sexy move F prime. And then you can solve this case with wide F sexy move wide F prime. And something you don't really have to know, but just for this specific OLL, if you happen to recognize it, these 2 bars and this big bar, is you want to have that all facing the right. So these pointing right. And then if you do that same thing I just showed, it will actually go straight to the rest of OLL. Then for you, after the first part of OLL, you have this case, and what you did here was like this. So this regrip, again, RU, R prime, you don't need to regrip if you do it this way. But what you did here after the regrip was back to here. So from here, it should be the same as usual, where you should do U2 here with your left hand. But what you did was this twice, which actually this is the pinch turn, so you kind of already know it, but you should never use it twice in a row because it's not a very fast finger trick to begin with. So instead from here, after the R, you should do U2 with your left hand. And I've seen you do U2 right hand, I'm not sure about left hand. Make sure you learn how to do it for both. And then similar idea here for the U-perm, you want to make sure you do the M2s with your ring and middle finger, otherwise it is not that fast to do 2 flicks in a row. So that would be middle ring, and just practice this a lot, and then the whole thing can be very fast. For this solve, again, the cross solution could be improved a lot. Here you have orange and blue, and you actually did these two first, but there's also green and red here that are very good, and I would actually recommend doing these two first. But let's just see what you did. So these two you inserted like this, blue and then orange, and that put red over here, which is not great. You then rotated to this side so you can insert red. And then green, here you just made a mistake. You thought it was like this, and then it wasn't, you took it out, then you inserted it this way. So you already know how to solve these two, but for green and red, what you can do is put in green first, and then put in red afterwards to the spot that it goes relative to green, which is just by moving green along this side, and then putting red in again, and then doing this. So that solves a red and green, but it puts blue and orange in a different spot. Now, would this cross solution have worked? Yes, if you just do it this way, it's not very hard. So what I mean is partway through, you're gonna end up with blue here, and you can just insert blue here at this point, and that's what this cross solution is. But that involves another moving piece. So just to make it even simpler, not necessarily a better cross solution, but it's just a simpler one to think about, is like this instead. To solve red and green, I use two D moves, and the problem with that is D moves the blue piece. So what I could do first is D2, and that kind of counteracts the two D moves in terms of what it does to blue. So watch, once I do red and green, blue is right back where it started because the two D moves in the beginning counteracted the D moves it did later. And then you can do orange and blue the same way you would have in the beginning. For F12, you started with orange green, and I think you already have your way of doing this, which is by inserting the corner here and the edges over here. Then you just pair them up like this. Now, instead of all that, what you can do for this case, if you just memorize that when this one's white on top and this one doesn't match when you put them on top of each other, you can always move them to the side like this and do sledgehammer on the edge. And that always pairs them up to be inserted. Even if you did it your way, when you get to this part, you want to make sure that if you have to rotate to insert, then what you do instead is rotate so that it's a back slot. Now, if you did that, see how these pieces are now much easier to see, and you also have this piece and this piece. But since you inserted it into a front slot, then those are harder to see, and this one is now invisible. So only when you have to rotate, prioritize back slots as it makes look ahead easier. Then what you did next was this pair, and you rotated, which is good, but then you started doing F moves here, which is not correct, and you noticed it wasn't correct after doing 3 U moves. In general, when you're starting out, I recommend simplifying things a bit. And in this case, it's not necessarily faster to do more F moves. A habit I recommend instead that I used to do, and I think is perfectly fine, is always just put it like this so that it's ready to go into the spot next to it. And then from there, you can determine whether you need F or R or L moves. Generally, you shouldn't be using a lot of F move inserts anyway, so this, I think, is perfectly fine to always do that. Plus, it simplifies things a lot, so there's less to think about as you go through F2L. But what you did, just so we can continue through the solve, is this, and then U prime that, and then you inserted this one. Next, you had this case, and what should you do here if you have to rotate to solve it? You should rotate this way, so that it's a back slot. But you did it from this side, so I won't go through that again. And then now we have this one, and you should be able to see it even with U moves, and then insert into the back. But what you did was a double rotation. Overall, I think the most important thing for your improvement is to get more efficient with the cross. So being able to see piece relationships better, such as green-orange here, or orange-blue can actually go in together like that. Red-blue can go in together like this, and red-green can go in together like this. Make sure you check out some of my videos that show you a lot of the ways that this can work, as well as a lot of examples. And then being able to pick out the right relationships between pieces to know which ones to solve at the same time. It seems right now you plan about 2 pieces each cross, but try to use more of your inspection time, and on an easier cross plan all 4, and on a harder cross maybe just plan 3, but definitely extend it past how much you're currently doing and take more inspection time if you have to. Once you get more efficient at the cross, you want to not just plan out what moves you do, but make sure you can do it very quickly by planning out some of the finger tricks you use as well. In F2L, you have a habit of often using F moves to help you pair up pieces to avoid a cube rotation. There are specific cases where this is better, but I would say you should be more advanced before trying to think too much about that, as right now it can be hard to judge what's worth it and what's not. For now, what I do recommend is just going with R and L moves all the time, and do cube rotations if you have to force them to be R and L moves. This also helps you develop better muscle memory for RUL turning, that way you can get most of your turns much faster, rather than if you switch between F moves and RL moves all the time, that can actually make your progress for turn speed go a little bit slower. Then another good habit to get into is once you start using R and L moves, you'll have to rotate for a case like this, and then you should think about front slot or back slot. So in this case, it's better to insert it into a back slot. That way it's easier to see all your other pieces. That's it for this month's critiques, and check out any of these videos on the end screen if you want to learn more about some of the things I talked about. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.